Hello and welcome to the Digital EDU Dialogues podcast. I am Angela Britcher, and joining me today is instructional designer and learnicorn, Julianne Westbrook. Julianne, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I am so excited to have you here because we have done some work in the past, and you are such a wonderful combination of creativity meets organization. And
Thank
this is
you.
this is something I think that we instructional designers really need, and something that we really get to bring to the table when we are being creative, as well as managing the process of creating courses for people. And you have worked in education, and you are now applying those lessons to corporate training and to people development. And you've also developed a really clear process for instructional design.
Yes, it's
And
exciting.
And that's what we want to talk about today. Let's start by talking about this process you have. And if you could just kind of give a general overview of the work that you do.
Sure. I work at a healthcare organization in Tennessee, specifically Compassus. I work on the people team, which is what some people call human resources. And so at that point, I am a resource that can be used for our entire organization. So a lot of my customers are internal to the organization. They might be a vice president, they might be a training director, it might be somebody that needs audio touched up on something before they publish it into another system. And so at some points, we're responsible for creating something from nothing or making something better, improving on it. But the main goal is always really there's a lot of business drivers there in place to help us succeed, set some goals, and set some milestones. And so, as a very small team, we get the opportunity to kind of interact with the largest group or enterprise.
I like how you
And
point out that idea that your customers are internal, and that your customers are your entire organization.
yes. So it's big and it's big. And when you have a smaller, leaner team, we really focus on and we're focusing on continually efficiency. And so we're now looking at this blend between design and, like you said, organization and project management. And that's something that I've enjoyed for a long time. Like, can we do this better? And sometimes you can, and sometimes I love it when I can't improve on a process. But if there's an opportunity to streamline or optimize, which we hear a lot, but make something better using existing systems, I love being a part of that. It's more than integration, it's more than implementation. I almost feel like I'm recycling within the organization. I'm not having to go spend more money, I'm not asking for an additional budget, but I'm really looking to use the resources, so human physical capital as well as instructional and technological resources. And that part is really exciting in my job.
And it's made you a great resource to the organization. Let's talk a little bit more detail about some of the ways that you are bringing those efficiencies. One of the things that you and I had talked about before was this idea of working with internal SMEs, and how that has really impacted the price tag of creating different types of onboarding and compliance training. If you could share more about bringing that idea to the table.
I have a great example. I work on a two-person team of instructional designers. It's myself and a team member named Tam. So shout out Tam. Team of two. And there became an opportunity for our organization, which has a big regulatory compliance standard. So we're talking healthcare, HIPAA, patient care. And so it's us being safe as a company, our organization, but also making sure that we're protecting our patients and their families through these great practices. And we have some amazing talent at our organization in the compliance department. I've personally gotten to work with them a couple times, and I just come away with the best, most settled feeling. And these professionals have worked in healthcare. Some of them have just specifically worked in corporate ed, but a lot of them also offer healthcare experience, or they're usually lawyers or investigators. And so these people help keep us kind of iron tight. And I thought, for us to have an opportunity, which came about as an organization, to create our own internal training. So customized, specific to our organization because it's so niche in many ways. And then also to value the internal medical directors. We have amazing hospice nurses and home health educators that we need to rely on, because these people, they went to school, they were in higher education, they spent the time, they have the commas and the initials, right, behind their names. We see it on LinkedIn. And I think that there's a way to value that inside the organization. So we had this crazy idea. Can we make our own compliance training? Like, are we crazy enough to make this? And then, like, could we? And I thought, I think we can. I think that we have a way to do that by, again, my subject matter experts. I didn't have to go and pay an additional fee, right, for a third party consultancy over a year-long period of time, or multiple consultant advisors. It took a whole lot of coordination, but I will say this: Tam, our instructional designer, hit this head on, and she combined with our basically entire compliance team and brought this from the bottom all the way to the top. So the thought that we could do it, but I think the most exciting thing was we were able to go and partner with people in our organization that we might not have if we had just went and bought a third party, which was perfectly fine. It's a great solution for some people who don't have that kind of headcount or the capacity, right, in their organization. But we had the talent, we had the technology, and then here's the biggest part: we had the will to want to do it. And so, really cool. Our organization supported us, through technology, through time. Obviously, we still work for the company, so we're super excited about that. But to be able to start a project like that, it brought back some, I think, additional value to us, and then also a huge experience breaker. It was bigger than a program. It was like a compliance regulatory program that has to be bound and tight and ironclad and signed off on by these people who went to law school, went to medical school. And then we have our board of directors and our investors that rely on us to keep those high standards. So that's just one great recent huge example of leveraging talent, time, and our resources to save and then also streamline and honor that employee and peer relationship. It was awesome experience.
Yeah, what a great way to use your internal resources and your people resources. And I'm thinking, as an employee, instead of that, oh, I'm seeing two actors that are doing my compliance training, I'm seeing people that are vested in this company. I'm seeing someone that works on another floor, or in the office. And so I think what a great way to bring relationship build within the company as well.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
other thing that you and I had talked about was this idea of relying on tools that you already have. That I think it's so tempting, right? Like, oh, the shiny object for productivity or efficiency or team building or even instructional design, certainly. Like, let's get the new cool thing. And instead, you decided to use tools that you already have. If you could share your experience using tools that we all have easy access to.
Sure. I am particularly interested in using Microsoft Office 365. It's a great tool. It comes loaded on most of our computers. I've used it in higher education because you usually get a work or a school account, right? So for people that are blessed to have a Microsoft 365 account through work or school, go and take a look at it. Look at those apps that are available to you. What I was able to create working in our department here, again, small and mighty, but think learning and development, enterprise wide. We needed a way to capture incoming requests. Everybody always has a great idea. Oh, I want to get with you on this. Can you create that for me? And we want to keep having those opportunities. Again, these are my clients. They're my customers. They're human, resource business partners. I want them coming back to me. I want them to have a great experience. How do we hold and how do we model them through that process? So put my thinking cap on, and we needed an intake process. So I utilized Microsoft Forms, and this was where anybody in the organization could go and ask for our assistance. We asked them to provide some details, dates, think project management bound, like who's your audience? When are we doing this? And some important details like what's your anticipated deadline here, which is when would they like their final product done? And so following a project management kind of protocol, we adapted that for instructional design specifically. And it all started with Microsoft Forms. From there, we created a team. And the team's infrastructure allows us to do group scheduling. So we schedule our kickoff meetings with our subject matter experts and other internal stakeholders in the company. So if you have 3 people from 3 different departments, Wouldn't it be nice for all of you to be on the same task, invited to the same meeting, and all inside your organization? And I try to think of that experience of, can somebody actually follow along with me through a project, or is it too much for them? And if you leave something open long enough, people will come and check in on it if it works for them. So again, making sure it works. Using Teams opened up a whole nother world, which is like that next level is SharePoint. So think of internal or intranet, making your own web pages at work. It's gotten a lot better than it has, I would say, pre 2020. So things are obviously moving quickly. But from the ask, that intake form kicks off a series of events or triggers, basically. And we use Microsoft Task and Planner, which is another application in your Microsoft, armor of tools, those apps that you have. You may see it marked as Planner. And we made sure that that tool was plugged in with Teams to allow us to have those two apps kind of talk to each other. So think of adding a widget, right? Maybe to your class in a learning management system. And so we took that and we created a list of rules and parameters, very basic but specific. So every time somebody in our organization submits this form, it notifies me, it notifies my team member, it gives them an automatic OneDrive folder to drop all their assets in. So I'm not chasing people for, could I get that PowerPoint or could I get your image? It gives them an opportunity to give us as much information as possible on the front end. It makes that kickoff go a lot smoother. I know what I'm walking into, and I usually end up being very prepared because we're going to, research and following steps and following processes. We keep it all really intact. Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Planner, and the view that it gives us when we're done, we're able to look at project categories, right? Or domains. For some people, it might be you want to track projects in a department. It's nice to use small tools that don't require a large subscription to manage your time. And if you think of every project as something to manage, it's really easy to adapt the tools. And that's where we've been, I think, most successful, and we've stayed organized and been able to accept the volume of work that we have.
And it sounds like the way that you're using these tools, you've, customized it for your organization and for your projects, but Microsoft Office is the language we all speak as well. So I'm
Yes.
thinking it breaks down that barrier of, oh my gosh, I'm interacting with the instructional design team and I have to use the fancy tool, or there's gonna be acronyms I don't understand. And instead it's, tools that we're all generally familiar with and again, already have installed on our laptops. And so what a great way, again, to like bridge that gap for employees and for colleagues to be able to use a tool that we're all familiar with.
Love it. It's exciting. It's fun. And I don't think we've gotten too many complaints yet. So thumbs up. Thumbs up.
One of the other things that you have mentioned is this idea of you are a very small but mighty team. And I know you told me sometimes you are working on 20 to 30 projects at a time. And so this requires being very lean and agile and efficient. And so you created some specific steps to guide your team that you also share with your internal customers that you're working with. So if you could talk about your process and how you work with that with the people you serve.
Absolutely. So we've built an image, and maybe you can share this later with the folks here listening. But so step 0 is that kickoff. So once we get your intake form, we're going to go and figure out who is the best person to help you on this team. It's either going to be myself or my teammate, right? Or maybe I need to send you to another department, but it really helps clear up any, communication lines really early in the project, which is super important. Do I go left or do I go right? Let us help you get there. Step 1, we say analyze requirements is what it's labeled as. What that really is a needs analysis. So what are the requirements of this project? And then we further kind of desensitized it a little bit. And instead of saying assign learning objectives or, DSLOs, we're just like, let's identify what our learning objectives are. Sometimes people don't know how small they can be or how specific they might need to be. It really depends on the training. And so we may need to rely on Bloom's taxonomy, or perhaps we need to rely on Bloom's and a state-specific requirement. These are the important things for us because they allow us to measure later. Step 3 is where we develop our design. So after we've collected this information, we kind of have a hands-off with our subject matter expert as we move through these first couple phases. So step 0, 1, 2, and 3. as I'm developing a design, or as we're developing a design, we have to figure out what sort of modality we're going to use. Is this going to be a SCORM? Is this going to be an AICC file? Creating a SharePoint site for you? What is it that we're doing? It helps me narrow down where I need to author and what assets I might need. Then the next logical step there is step 4 for storyboarding. As we storyboard, we also go and consider, do we need to get some executive review here? Because usually once you visually lay this out, you can tell what kind of story you're telling, and that usually determines your impact if you haven't already, right, gauged that in your audience. And at that point, we're usually able to provide a pretty specific project completion due date, because we've assessed everything. We're looking at that, and we need to make sure that your ask as the subject matter expert or the requester is meeting what we can actually accomplish. So after we get that thumbs up and we notify people we're on target, our team as designers, we move into step 5, which is prototype development. And we have 3 major milestones there. It allows us not to get too far off track, or it also allows us the opportunity to change something, because businesses change, companies change, processes change. We have updates frequently. So if you're about to undertake a compliance program, there's going to be changes. Those milestones specifically are 50%, 80%, and 100%. And with those milestones in place, your subject matter expert can choose to come in and can comment on those items, can give you real-time feedback to help you from going additionally down another lane, or to cheer you on and give you a thumbs up and say, this is great, please keep going, I have my full faith in you. We usually get that more often than not. And it's that reassurance that somebody gets of, what can I actually do with you? What are these working boundaries? And a lot of people are afraid to ask. So tell them. And that's what this accomplishes. And so step 6 is our development. We'll go back and forth with our subject matter experts if needed, and we do that wash and review process. So any changes that weren't captured in 50, 80, or 100%, we can address in that wash process. So we're also assuring our clients, our customers, our internal stakeholders, hey, you still have a process to change this. We're not going to do anything against your will. If you're a faculty member, that content is usually your life and your career. So we have to make sure we're speaking for you, and we're doing the content the justice that they'd like to see. Again, our customer there. And so after the review and final changes, we move into step 7, and we'll hand off to our learning management system team and deliver SCORMs, appropriate files. We often make custom graphics and tiles to help differentiate in our systems. And step 8 and 9 it's a retrospective view, where step 8, we're going to evaluate the impact. So we'll look at those reports that were programmed when we submitted our request, right? We'll look at interactions. We'll go and look and see how many times somebody looked at the content. Was it more than once, more than twice? And then lastly, review and reporting. We try to preserve during the last 6 weeks of the year, going back and doing a full retrospective of, we've evaluated the impact, and now what changes do we need to make to improve? Because we usually have that data and that information through step 8, which is, was this a dud or was this awesome? Keep doing it, and let's just make sure we're freshening things. And it's been a solid process. And even if we follow step 0 through step 7, we're really helping mitigate major disasters in storage, or who has my file, or where is my project. So again, really focusing on transparency in that organization, project by project.
And it sounds like it's such a great introduction to an instructional design process for those customers that you're working with. To really, you've simplified this so it can help keep them on track when someone comes to you with, I have this brilliant idea, or I need you to create something about this. You'll go do it, right? And or the person that wants complete control over it. This is the gamut that we work with, and it's all good. But bringing those steps into place, I think, gives what a solid process for you and those internal customers, because then everyone knows where the project is. And as you're using SharePoint and using these tools, it gives that visual aspect of it too, of how the project is moving along. So again, I think you've simplified it in a way that makes sense to the average person that isn't accustomed to all of our fancy instructional design terms and acronyms, so that
Right?
they can follow along and create the project that they really want and need at the end of the day.
Thank you. That's what we were going for. It feels good. It's nice to be able to think of something, try it, do it, and then for it to work. And we're still doing it. It's been about 2 years
Mhm.
and it's working. I tried it before, but this was like we took a solid start date on this and it's been great for me, and hopefully our team and hopefully the organization will feel the same.
Mhm.
Your partners in that, getting things done, getting
Mhm.
projects finished. Yeah.
So one last thing. As other organizations work on creating training, development programs, compliance, what advice do you have for them so they can, achieve this organizational effectiveness that you and your team have created?
Sure. I think identifying your project and your team members is so important. When you really do when you have a project or a charter that helps bind you guys together, you're almost just together in this process. And anybody that gets involved in your project, if you all have the same mind and you actually understand the components of it, I think it's going to be hard for people to fall off of that. I think if we're talking about inclusion and success being related directly, I think take a look at your project and who do you actually need to bring in to get your project across the finish line. It's super easy to think about, oh, I'll just bring somebody in later. And I've found that being preventative and offering people a seat at the table and to look over your shoulder and see how you do things, they naturally almost find an opportunity to insert themselves to be of assistance for your project. So I think just that kickoff call is the most important thing. Bring those SMEs in, bring in your learning management system team. I love doing that with our team because they sit in the background and they actively participate. And they're getting all of these specs that otherwise would have to be sent in some, disingenuous, almost format style, answering those Boolean command type questions where can we accomplish this through a conversation like you and I are today? And that team has adapted what they've done and they've learned how to support us in our steps. So the kickoff is huge for me. And so if you want to start off on the right foot, involve those stakeholders, bring your SMEs together. And I think if your project purpose aligns, that charter and that accord is just going to really come along with it.
That is fantastic advice, Julianne. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's been amazing.
This episode of DigitalEDU Dialogues is brought to you by the BAB Group. The demands for teaching and online learning are constantly evolving. Don't get left behind. Carve out a competitive edge and give students engaging learning experiences with support from the BAB Group's team of course design experts. As experienced online faculty and instructional designers, the BAB Group knows how to craft those aha moments for students and meet outcomes for every modality, online, hybrid, and face-to-face, creating engaging, welcoming, and inclusive learning spaces for students of all ages and abilities has never been more important. Discover how the BAB Group can help you by visiting their